Thanks for staying with us. Now, former President Mahama has vowed to abolish the double-track system being implemented by the NPP administration under the free SHS policy. He says the current haphazard implementation of the policy leaves much to be desired and is very inconveniencing for parents and students. The former president, who was addressing a host of supporters and the media in Accra after filing his nomination forms Monday, said the NDC is not opposed to the policy but insisted increased access must go hand in hand with quality. This is not the first time the former president has alluded to the free SHS policy. In September this year, he indicated the NDC will review the policy if it is returned to power. In sharp response, President Akufo-Addo warned the NDC was seeking to collapse the policy. Mr. Mahama promised his government will get the process right.
We have suggested to Nana Akufo-Addo and his government that broader consultation with stakeholders, including the parents of the hundreds of thousands of students whose future depend on our leadership, getting this right would help the process. These have all been ignored and rubbished as anti-government propaganda, and we have been labeled as naysayers. These are ideas that their own Minister of Finance, who knows the full truth about our fiscal state, has publicly championed. But sadly, the pettiness and insecurity of the government is evident in the absolute refusal to consider these suggestions simply because it is coming from what they think are perceived opponents. The haphazard implementation of the free SHS is causing a lot of anxiety and inconvenience to students and their parents and guardians. And as I've said on the campaign trail a few times, when we come into office, we are going to put in place the necessary measures to better the implementation of the free SHS program. I will also work hard to abolish the double-track system in the shortest possible time. We will do this by investing massively in the expansion of school infrastructure, such as additional classroom blocks and dormitories, and the completion of the 200 community day senior high schools and the 200 community day senior high schools, popularly known as the E-blocks, that we started to enable all our children attend school at the same time and have adequate contact hours with their teachers.
So that's former President John Dramani Mahama addressing the media after he filed his nomination forms at the party's headquarters. We will hear from him later on, but right now on the phone to respond to some of the concerns he raised about the implementation of the free senior high school policy is Deputy Education Minister Dr. Yao Educhum. Many thanks for your time, sir.
Hello, good evening.
Right, so Mr. Mahama talks about the haphazard implementation of the policy and says he's going to scrap the policy or the double-track policy immediately he comes into power, if he is returned to power. Now, I mean, given that there have been concerns in the past about the implementation of the policy, concerns about lack of space, inadequate space, you know, and the like, how do you respond to what he is saying right now?
I want to say a very good evening to your cherished audience and also to your good staff, and also want to say a Merry Christmas in advance and thank you for all the hard work that you've done in helping us educate the good people of Ghana about the free senior high school and the benefits that will inure to the nation as we go forward and improve access and also quality at the same time in the secondary education space. First of all, let me tell you this. I want to cut President Mahama some slack because he's not an educationist, and so far as I'm concerned, I don't think he's talking to the right group of educationists who can truly advise him on the policy to be implemented and how it's going to be done. And he talks about consulting people after becoming president. The last time I checked, when you are running for president on such matters of critical importance as Praise Senior High School, you should have your advisory team in place advising you. It's not enough to say I'll abolish. Tell us what your options are and who you are going to exclude from going to school. Who you are going to tell to wait for 10 years before all your facilities are done. And also, for the record, when you hear President Mahama talking about 200 E-blocks, it's not the case. Only 124 were awarded on contract for construction. And out of the 124, only 23 had dedicated source of funding. So it was very haphazard kind of approach to school construction, very different from the approach that the President Akufo-Addo has taken, which is to securitize, against fund resources, so that he will be able to get revenue, enough revenue, to complete all the uncompleted E-blocks and other school facilities in order to really transition the nation from a double track to single track. We have a plan. Our Parliament has approved it. We started the initial process of getting 500 million to complete all the abandoned buildings across the various senior high school campuses. You see, that is a specific, coherent, logical plan that will help remove double track. So I want President Mahama to be able to have some people advising him who knows education and will be able to tell the good people of Ghana how he intends to abolish double track. It's just not enough to say, I'll abolish double track. What are you going to do? What are the
reference to concerns raised by some parents and students, even when this policy was being implemented, about the lack of space and other concerns that accompanied the double track?
When you talk about lack of space, then you are not talking about double track. Go to the various senior high schools. Talk to them about space. How schools have been decongested. Go to Accra Girls. See the reality on the ground. How class sizes have gone down because of double track. So when you talk about lack of space, you cannot in the same breath talk about double track, because double track is what has given more spaces to schools, and as a result has decongested schools and has given us an opportunity at the same time to actually bring more students on board. So probably if people get confused about double track, like President Mahama is also a bit concerned, I'm prepared to brief him if he wants me to, because double track is what has given more space, made more space available. So you can't talk about double track and talk about congestion in schools at this time. Last year, yes, schools were congested. Double track came, a number of schools have decongested, and class sizes have gone down. So probably President Mahama needs more advice in that area to be able to really understand what the double track is about.
How do you also respond to his accusation that, you know, people who, well-meaning people, have tried to advise government in this direction? He even makes reference to the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, suggesting probably that people who are able to pay should be made to pay.
My sister, I will be beating a dead horse when we go back and talk about payment and access and quality. We are talking about a different thing altogether. What this government has done, under the able leadership of Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, is to say the poor has been suffering for too long. We have a plan to make sure no child is left behind. And the president is always talking about that child somewhere in a village in Ghana, hidden from the view of most of us, but has great talent. How can we get that student to go to school? That's a different thing from all the other things that people are talking about. When you talk about people need, the headmasters are ready to write a receipt for anyone with money to give to the school. Any headmaster that you go to now and say, hey, I have money I want to pay. The last time I checked, nobody had written a check to any headmaster. Nothing stops those who are well-to-do from paying. But what we are saying is very simple. There has been an equity element to this. There are so many schools that the poor has never had access to. For the first time in the history of this nation, you go to Wesley Girls High School and you have up to about 30% of the enrollment coming from poor urban communities and rural areas. People who never dreamt that they would set their foot on the campus of Wesley Girls are there today. Go to Achimota, go to Infanticum, go to Augustine. The story is the same. This is the legacy of double track that has opened up access in these prestigious institutions to those who have gone there to begin with, and then those who couldn't have gone there are now there, and they are going to have a better future. When President Mahama talks about canceling double track, when he becomes a flag bearer, probably he will set up a committee to advise him on education. And at that point in time, we want him to come with better and better particulars as to how he's going to cancel double track and not disadvantage the poor people in this country. And that is the kind of debate I'm waiting to have.
Very well.
And with anyone.
Okay.
About how do we not disadvantage those who have suffered for years in this country and give them the opportunity to have access to what we, the elites of this nation, have had access to for years.
Very well. Very well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Okay. That's Deputy Education Minister Dr. Yao Educhimde responding to former President Mahama's comments about the double track. Well, the former president has also been speaking about impending blackouts in the country. He says there should be no excuse for inadequate power supply, as the NDC government in 2016 made medium and long-term provisions for the power sector to avoid what has become known as doomsday.
We see the cracks in government accountability. In the throes of the energy crisis, we sought to stabilize the nation's power supply with the Parliamentary and other power projects. The situation we experienced in those trying times where we were at the mercy of an acute crisis. And so with these works, we tried to resolve the problem by putting in extra generation. The cumulative effect of underinvestment in the critical infrastructure for power generation across the decades is what landed us in this quandary. We were therefore focused on medium and long-term planning for the energy sector, but we're also keenly aware that more immediate solutions were also necessary. And this critical intervention of bringing emergency generation, which eventually helped us to climb out of the crisis, was ridiculed by our opponents, the MPP. And yet, their own handling of this same project and the furore that it sparked has been abysmal, to say the least. Months down the line, the fundamentals of the government's energy policy have proven to be weak, and the return of doomsday has clearly begun to expose the NPP administration. My brothers and sisters, we see the cracks in the pluralist traditions of young democracy. We in NDC have continued to voice genuine concerns about those parts of their policy that have betrayed a gross lack of foresight and a poverty of pragmatic thinking. We have done so to give voice to the frustration of the masses of everyday Ghanaians who seek only to have their own concerns heard and acknowledged. But these constructive criticisms have been ignored by the government that believes itself to have a monopoly on knowledge.
And with the Yuletide just around the corner, Mr. Mahama is also warning Ghanaians to brace themselves for a less than Merry Christmas. He criticized the MPP's handling of the economy, saying many Ghanaians are suffering.
I wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, knowing fully well that most Ghanaian families are going to go through the driest Christmas they have ever experienced in the history of Ghana, because they are going through excruciating economic difficulties. We will continue to put pressure on this government to push back on their insensitive economic policies, even as we offer hope of better times under the new ND administration, which, God willing, will assume office on 7th January 2021. With Christ in the vessel, we smile at the storm.
Former President John Mahama there. You're still watching Joy News Prime live on the Joy News channel on Multi-TV as well as Joy Prime. We're taking a short break, but still ahead. Clashes in Parliament. Foreign Affairs Minister Shirley Ayoko faces off with MP for Ningo Prampram after he attempted to film her during a heated debate outside the chamber.
Assault me. No.
We'll hear from the minority as it claims the government inflated the cost of a 6-bedroom residence for Ghana's new mission in Norway. Details after the break. Now, it's a documentary revealing widespread extortion of monies from patients at the Tamale Teaching Hospital. Even before the documentary premieres tonight, a section of the public says the practice is widespread in many hospitals across the country. Robbing the sick is a product of a year-long undercover investigation by Joy News following concerns by patients who visit the facility, said to be Ghana's 3rd biggest teaching hospital. In the following piece, a midwife detains a fresh mother after delivery because she could not pay 32 cedis demanded by the healthcare worker.
While hanging out on the corridors of the OBS and Ghani department, I meet this lady. I've decided to call her Zina. Her sister was detained at the maternity ward. The midwife who delivered her of her baby is demanding money for assisting her during the delivery. This midwife is popularly called Auntie B. She had closed for her nightly duties, but waiting on Zina to pay 30 cedis delivery fee. This is the 2nd time I'm accompanying such distressed patients to pay on their behalf.
My brother and sister, no say we say also to ask little bit. Okay.
Such monies are not sanctioned by the authorities of the Tamale Teaching Hospital. Dr. David Akombela is the chief executive of the hospital.
The question of extortions by health personnel from our clients, I've been hearing such complaints on radio and but nobody has concretely brought a report to me on any concrete person taking money from a particular client. But we have taken steps. We've actually written out to notify all staff that it's illegal for anybody to take monies from anybody through any unapproved channel without receipts. So our staffs are aware that when they are caught in that act, they will be reprimanded heavily.
Meanwhile, a section of the public maintain the practice of extortion is widespread in many hospitals in the country and are demanding urgent solutions.
It's a young doctor who was on duty then. So it was like one-on-one with the doctor. So that particular ailment, it was supposed to be admitted. But for some reasons best known to the facility or the administrators there, he was told that he was going to be treated and discharged. But if he will want the admission, that one he will have to. And the doctor mentioned an amount like that. I can even disclose the amount to you, 500 Ghana cedis. Yes, and he has to pay the money right there in the consulting room. And that was what exactly happened. And he was treated that day. He was given an infusion and then some other medication by the doctor. He supervised everything at the hospital and was discharged.
Was he given a receipt for this money he took?
No receipt, no receipt, no receipt at all. And he was doing that as a help to him. And you know, a sick person is eager to get healed and move on with his life. So that is what exactly happened.
No, those who want to cross the line, they have to tip somebody to cross. Yes. So if in that case, then it's your own course. If you want to be attended to earlier than those you came to meet, then you are going to do the thing. It's not the fault of the clinic or it's not the fault of the hospital.
About 1 year now, my husband too went to the same hospital to do the check on her chest. He was coughing. When he went, they do some receipts for him, and the actual receipt wasn't the one that they gave it to him. The amount that he paid, that's not the receipt that they gave it to him, and they directed him to go and do X-ray somewhere. So that's that.
It wasn't an official receipt they gave him?
Something like that. They didn't give him the official receipt because they're supposed to give him the actual amount that he paid, but they didn't give it to him like that. The money that he paid, that's not the amount that the receipt that they give it to him. Let's take it. He paid 100 cedis, and they give him 80 cedis receipt.
But did he question the health official?
He came home before he looked at the receipt, and he realized that they didn't give him the actual receipt.
Well, Public Relations Officer of the Tamale Teaching Hospital, Dr. Ken Osei-Mensah, corroborated the report in robbing the sick, but says hospital authorities have already taken action to check it.
I'm not, because, like I said earlier on the AM show, we had heard commentary of this on local radio stations that people were expressing some concerns about some of the payments they were making at the hospital. And so management has already taken steps as early as January through April this year in trying to create an avenue for people to make formal complaints, and also for hospital management to be able to assess the situation and deal with it appropriately.
Okay, talking about formal complaints, we heard earlier the Chief Executive Officer of the Tamale Teaching Hospital say that they had heard these allegations. There were no formal complaints. Beyond the complaints, did you investigate these allegations and claims by your clients or patients?
So when we had the commentary on some of these extortion cases, what we did was that we went into partnership with NGOs in the northern region, Khaled being one of them, and then League of Youth being another, to create an avenue for clients of the hospital. If they come to the hospital and they feel that at any point in time they are being made to pay for certain things that they don't think it's appropriate, they have a channel with which they can partner. We also went further than that to do massive education on radio and also in town hall meetings in Tamale to educate the populace on the right appropriate payment channels in the hospital. Beyond that, we also increased the surveillance systems in the hospital, and you'll be amazed to hear that as I speak to you right now, we have 2 people facing court for pretending to be staff of the Tamale Teaching Hospital and defrauding unsuspecting clients of their monies. A member of our own staff is also in court for defrauding clients. So management is doing everything it possibly
What kind of surveillance are you talking about? CCTV cameras?
We have CCTV cameras in there. We have security officers being asked to check for receipts at service points. We've also, as much as possible, this reportage system has created an avenue for people who even want to report anonymously are able to do that. We've created a client customer service centers in the hospital for people to walk in or even make a phone call, and then your whatever challenge you have, you can report it and the management takes it up. So as much as possible, management is doing quite a lot about some of these situations.
Well, speaking of corruption in hospitals, there's a study that has been done, and it finds that the corruption persists partly as a result of a lot of issues. Now, we will be speaking to those who did the survey. They found that 73% of patients and 69% of the community respondents, respectively, I beg your pardon, I'll take that again. With regards to the nature and forms of corrupt practices in health facilities, the survey found various types of corruption and abuse of office as mentioned by all categories of respondents. These include informal or payment without receipts between health workers and patients, paying bribes to get health service, absenteeism and lateness, bribes and kickbacks, especially in NHIS claims. Abu Inusa is president of the League of Youth Association. He joins us on the line. Many thanks for your time. You've also been interacting with patients in Scorecard. What have they been telling you?
Good evening, madam. And let me say good evening to our cherished listeners. In fact, this program has started since 2015. We receive complaints from customers, the kind of extortion many people, the kind of extortion the hospital authorities are taking from people. So this complaint got to our attention. Then we quickly went to the management, start with them. We start with the CEO as well as the public relations officer of the Tamil Teaching Hospital. Then we also moved to the Tamil Central Hospital. We start with the administrator, then to the West Hospital, because these are the three main hospitals where these complaints are coming from. So we start with them, and we put the questions before them. They themselves agree that some extortions are actually taking place. And for that matter, they can be anywhere. But whatever is being caught, that if we see anybody extorting money, we should report it to them. Actually, Tamil Teaching Hospital, for them, they are doing well because we have reported many cases to them, and they have actually taken serious note about it. For example, one person was extorted 50 Ghana cedi from the laboratory. The lab technician took some money from him. The person reported the case to us. We went to the hospital. We quickly contacted the public relations officer, the PR, Dr. Ken. Though he wasn't at the hospital, he was in Accra, but he quickly acted. Because those people were queried, and they were asked to be suspended because they are not referring collectors. And for that, why should they go in for money from patients? That is, we have directed them to the pay point. So after the Tamil Teaching Hospital, we are working in collaboration with them. They are actually doing work. But after Tamil Central and Hospital, for them, they are not cooperating. Because when you report a case to them.
So what recommendations, I mean, with all that you're coming up with, what recommendations did your research come up with?
And we conducted a community scorecard in 15 selected communities. So we bring out about 5 indicators, which are one, extorting money, patients assessing. How do they assess a patient and a nurse's relationship? So they rate them according to what they think their behavior, their behavior towards them. So we conducted this in 15 selected communities, and they rate them, those various hospitals. Actually, TCH has done well, but the others, they have done poorly. Though I haven't had the record with me, Leacraft, giving out the rate at which they have given them.
All right. Many thanks for your time. And that is Abu Inusa. He is the president of the League of Youth Association, which has done some work on corruption in health facilities in the country, particularly in the northern region. You're still watching Joy News Prime with me, Arba Kumsim. We're taking a short break. You're welcome back. Now, there was drama outside the Chamber of Parliament on Monday after Foreign Affairs Minister Shirley Ayoko Boche got into a heated argument with North Tong MP Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa. This was after the MP had alleged government has inflated the cost of a 6-bedroom residence for Ghana's mission in Norway. According to Mr. Okudzeto-Ablakwa, government is buying the building for $12.21 million after it was sold to the current owners in August 2017 for $3.5 million US. He says about $8.5 million gap in the difference is uncalled for. The issue came up as the House debated the budgetary estimates of the Foreign Affairs Ministry for approval.
Investigations that we have conducted on this side reveals that the $16.5 million that this committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, has been presented as a budget for the new mission in Oslo, the Chancery and the Ambassador's residence, is outrageously high. It is outlandishly inflated, Mr. Speaker. The Chancery building, I have the records here, Mr. Speaker. This building was bought in 2014 for 25.2 million Norwegian kroner, which is equivalent to 2.9 million United States dollars. Then in 2017...
Honorable members, I mean, this kind of... I'm listening patiently.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
please stop that kind of approach.
Mr. Speaker, according to the Mr. Speaker, according to the Norwegian financial newspaper known as Finansavisen, Lillian Olsen sold the property in August 2017 to an unknown buyer for 31 million Norwegian kroner, which is equivalent to 3.5 million United States dollars. Then our foreign ministry is buying this property at 105,180,000, which is equivalent to $12.21 million. A property that was sold for only $3.5 million last year, August last year. So what is going on? Who did the due diligence?
When I said discrepancy, the discrepancy.
So those were the proceedings on the floor earlier today as Norton MP Samuel Kujeto Ablakwa challenged the Foreign Affairs Minister. But Parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opokugapo is with me in the studio. He joins me with more details. So what happened after this debate in the chamber?
And so when Mr. Ablakwa raised the issue, he tabled documents that he says were evidence to back this particular allegation,
right?
Which eventually the speaker said he was rejecting the evidence, although he had seen it. In fact, for like 10 minutes, everyone was sitting in the house, everyone was silent. The speaker says he was reviewing the document, and they were all waiting. And after looking at the document, he said that these were documents that had been printed from the internet, and so he's rejecting them. And that drew a bit of noise in the house, to the extent that the speaker had to suspend sitting for about an hour before the MPs came back. But when eventually the house approved the budgetary estimate for the ministry, and subsequently the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Shelia Ekobotri, she addressed the media outside Parliament, denying the claims Mr. Ablakwa made, and indicated that as at last week Thursday, she had directed that they pull brakes on all the processes to allow for the purchase of this particular building. So Ghana is not going ahead with it.
When I said discrepancy, the discrepancy between the figure that the article quoted and this document that was brought to us. Immediately, I asked them to stop or stay all proceedings on the transaction. I'm even told that the owner is speaking to, he has 3 different offers, and he's speaking to them. I do not intend in any way, at least as at last week, I had no intention of continuing with that transaction, the purchase. Let me say that Norway is a very expensive place, and that is a fact. Properties are very expensive there. So I asked them to start looking elsewhere, or even temporarily, we should rent for both the Chancery and the residence. So that is where we are. And so for the ranking member to use words like fraudulent transaction, outrageously inflated, and all those words, I found it very unacceptable. Because if he had taken the pains to talk to me before, I would have given him the information that having had this issue come to my notice, I've asked them to abrogate, I mean, not go forward with the transaction.
Now, Joseph is still with me in the studio, and the news today was that there was a near scuffle, if I can call it that, between the Foreign Affairs Minister and the MP for Ningo Prampram. How did he get into this whole melee?
So when the House was suspended for an hour to allow for the Speaker to do some consultations and all, then outside Parliament, just on the foyer, the Foreign Affairs Minister met Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa. So she was explaining to him, they were having heated arguments about what had happened on the floor, and it got quite heated, and everyone else was around, a number of the MPs, a number of journalists. And what happened was Samuel George pulled out his phone and was filming the heated exchanges between Mr. Ablakwa and Madame Shelley Ayokoboche. And at a point in time, Madame Ayokoboche raised concern about how come he was filming the incidents and stretched the hand trying to get off the
And we have that video. I think we can play that video now.
Pull me for a week. Don't worry. What are you hiding? You're hiding the truth. Hiding what? The media is covering it. Hiding what? The media is covering it.
Whether I've heard number one, number two, if anything has been done about it. There's no acceptance of any other. You can film it.
Are you coming to assault me? Hey, no.
So we see Sam George being restrained there. Was there actually, did it come to fisticuffs?
No, it didn't get there. So at that point in time, both of them were being restrained. The NPP MPs were taking Madame Shelley Ayokoboche away, and then the NDC MPs were taking Sam George away. And Sam George was making the point that he'd been assaulted. He was going to report the matter to the Speaker. Madame Ayokoboche has been responding to that at the media briefing that was addressed. She denies assaulting him.
Okay.
And then you're talking about alleged. Do I look like somebody who can assault a man?
So take one more in English and then we'll take a few more in...
There's a video going out there, so you may want to speak to that.
The video was a heated conversation between myself and Okudzeto Ablakwa, who is the ranking member. And in the conversation, I was very disappointed, and he was also talking back, and I was making my point clear to him that I felt he should have consulted me or asked me where we were at concerning this Oslo matter before going on the floor, because if he had, I would have told him that it's no longer an issue. And that is how it was, a very heated conversation. I think that, that is allowed. I went off. Yes, and then let me say that as we were having that heated conversation, Sam George had his phone up recording it. That is a violation of privacy. That is not acceptable. Why is everybody talking about, my stretching my hand to do what? To hit him, to assault him? How would I do that? What was I going to? I was talking to him that why are you recording? I'm sure you heard me saying, why are you recording? Why are you recording this?
He says he's headed by the Privileges Committee.
It's good, let him go, because then I will also go to the Privileges Committee and talk about the fact that he violated my privacy.
Well, moving on, the race of who leads the NDC in the 2020 elections officially just started as 4 candidates have filed their nomination forms to the party to contest in the upcoming presidential primaries. Former President John Mahama, Professor Joshua Alabi, Sylvester Mensah and Alban Bakwin all submitted their forms. They were all hopeful of leading the party and pledged to run a decent campaign. My colleague Kwesi Parker-Wilson has more in this report.
The NDC headquarters was packed as supporters of various flag bearer aspirants stormed the place to cheer their respective candidates. The various aspirants were met on arrival by the General Secretary and Chairman of the party and other executives. The first candidate to file his nomination forms was Second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bakwin. Speaking to the media shortly after submitting his forms, he asked the National Executive Committee to ensure a level playing ground for all aspirants.
But for us to win election 2020, we must first win the battle for the soul of our party. My brothers and sisters, for us to win election 2020, we must win election 2019 by electing Ask Bakwin in the primaries. We have a dire need as a party to beat a path back to our roots and to once again hold high the core values and principles that made the NDC the beacon of hope and the party of choice.
Next is former Vice Chancellor of UPSC, Professor Joshua Alabi. Prof. Alabi, who says his vision is to transform the fortunes of the party, called on the party to find innovative ways of generating resources to fund its activities in order to curb the recurrence of the controversial filing fees, insisting that is not a prudent way to raise funds for the party.
I have to pay 300,000 Ghana cedi to present myself to lead this party. If we handle this party very well, I think in the near future, flag bearers will not have to pay for anything. So the common man with good ideas can lead this party and lead this country to the high. I'm afraid for our party. For those who supported the amount, there will be a time, if we don't take care, we will be charging branch chairman 10,000 Ghana cedi to be chairman of the various branches. We have to work and find innovative methods to resource our party, innovative methods to rebuild our country, innovative methods to find employment for our teeming youth.
Former President Mahama walks in amidst loud cheers. After submitting his forms, the former president pledged to abide by the rules and regulations of the primaries as spelled out by the party.
Officially, by the presentation of these nomination forms. And I know that the process will terminate when eventually we are vetted and accepted as official candidates of the party. I want to thank all my colleagues who have made this very competitive, and to say that this is a friendly competition amongst members of the same party. And I want to promise you and pledge to you that I'll maintain the ethics of a very clean campaign. And I'm positive that at the end of the process, John Dramani Mahama will emerge as a candidate.
Indeed, the road to the primaries is muddy and rough, yet former CEO of National Health Insurance Authority, Sylvester Mensah, is hopeful as he filed his forms. He was, however, concerned about the short time to campaign and win the hearts of delegates.
We have taken some time to go around some regions and constituencies. We feel stampeded into an election because the time frame for the elections appears rather too short. We are certainly not able, under the circumstances, to undertake an effective campaign that would require complete and total engagement of all our delegates across the country.